a week or so ago when Rabbi David Julian was with us. I think we all left that Wednesday night with a feeling that there's a whole lot more similarity between us and our Jewish friends than there are differences. And there's a whole lot more similarity between all of mankind, really, than there are differences. And it's funny, just as I got up from the desk in there to head in here a little while ago, I got an alert and I looked, and there was a text from Rabbi David Julian. And guess where Rabbi David Julian is this morning? He's sitting right directly across the street in church at Evergreen Presbyterian Church, where his wife is playing for them this morning. And his message was, I hope you, dear friends, have a wonderful service. I take that, those words from David, and what's happened over here, as a blessing, as I hope you do. There was a dad a number of years ago who decided that Christmas was going to be different this year. So he called a family meeting. How many of you all ever had a family meeting? How many of y'all ever had to call a family conference? Generally, family conferences are called in crisis. They're not to say, gee, everything is so good and I want to pat you on the head and say, well done. That never was the way it was in our house, was it, Annie? No, I didn't think it was. You know, you call family conferences in time of crisis. And he challenged his family to get more into the true meaning of Christmas and not to buy into and get so caught up in the commercialism and hustle and bustle. And he asked them to be just a little bit more mindful of their time together and to limit the spending that they did on their gifts for each other and for their friends. And they had children. So he talked about getting along together and establishing a loving relationship in their home. And as his talk went on, he got kind of like a high school coach, and it built, and it built, and it built. And at the end of his speech, and when it reached its crescendo, he made his final cry, let's make this the very best Christmas ever. And his 8-year-old, 7-year-old, second grade son raised his hand. He said, but Dad, I don't see how we could ever improve on that first Christmas. Now think about that. Pretty amazing, isn't it? How we've tried. Oh, how we have tried to improve on that first Christmas. There was a little boy who was well-versed in the Christmas story. He went to Sunday school every Sunday morning, and he knew the scriptures and the Christmas story that we just read, and he loved it different. He loved it deeply. And he was out shopping with his mom. And they went in to K&B Toys. And then they went into Toys R Us. And they went into all of these toy stores, and he was old enough to wander off from his mom, and he looked on the shelves, and he picked them up, and he shook them, and he smelled them, and he looked at them and everything, and pretty soon he came back, and he caught up with his mom. And he had this really frustrated look on his face, and his mom said, what's the matter? And the little boy said, I've looked everywhere. And I found all sorts of toys. But where's Jesus? Where's Jesus? That's a great question for any of us, not just a little boy, to ask at Christmas time. Where is Jesus? And you know, I kind of get the feeling sometimes, I suspect that God might ask that question too. I really don't think that we can improve on that first Christmas. But bless our hearts, don't we keep trying? Every year, we keep trying to improve. Wonder why that is. And as I pondered that, thought about it over the last week and a half, I think it's because from the world's point of view, from that influences us, everything there is about Christmas was just flat wrong. There was nothing right about it according to the world. First of all, the gift was the wrong gift. If you ask anybody before Christmas what they wanted for Christmas, I'll bet you not a one of you got an answer that said, I want God to enter into human history. Anybody ask the question, what do you want for Christmas, and get that answer? I didn't think so. Did you get an answer that said, I want God to step down out of heaven, to become like us, and to live right here in the middle of us? I asked several people what they wanted for Christmas. Didn't get that answer, that's for sure. Even those with the deepest faith probably wouldn't have asked for God to come and sit in our worship service. I wonder why. Well, I think it's because it's frightening. God, think about it. God in the flesh, wandering around in my world and in your world, messing in my affairs, getting into my stuff, knowing everything that I do, wanting to have a relationship. You know, as long as God's in heaven, as long as He's way up, off, far, far away, and He's some distant figure that we really don't have to deal with very frequently, it's okay. But if God becomes one of us, if we see Him 2 aisles over in the Kroger, you know, that means He's real flesh and blood. And He's just like Mitch, or Mark, or Shula, or any of us. And God's real. And that scares us. He's no longer something out there pie in the sky by and by. He's not some theological head game, but He's here with us. And you know what? If God is real, and if God is among us, then the demands and the expectations that God has of each of us are real too. I don't want that. I'm scared of it. Who would ask for that? So I think you can see why, according to the standards of our world, it was the wrong gift. Not only was it the wrong gift, it came at the wrong time. If God were to do it all over again, now I want you to think about this, now would be the perfect time for Him to send His Son. Look at all the mass communication that we've got today. What was mass communication 2,000 years ago? A town crier? A public announcement in the synagogue? You know, that was it. But today, if Jesus had been born, we would capture the whole thing on video. And we would broadcast it live all over the world. We could text message people with our cell phones. And we could stream video of the angels and the wise men on the internet. We could send out a spam-free mass email. And it would be forwarded to our friends. That was tough to get out. John Bennett could send out something from the church office. You know, in a matter of minutes, everybody would know what was going on. Think about it. Lester Holt, Wolf Blitzer, and others fighting to interview the shepherds. Now, I bet you the National Enquirer would be there too, and they'd be looking for the angels because they would want to do a banner headline about alien visitation. That's what they would bring on. And then imagine a play-by-play description on CNN or MSNBC or whatever of the wise men bringing their gifts and the description of their gifts. And then online there would be pop-up links to show us how to use frankincense, to show us how to use myrrh. And there would be this giant spreadsheet available to everybody on the price of gold in every market out there. You know, we would also finally get the answer to that question that really has bothered people over 2,000 years. How many wise men were there really? Were there 3? Were there 5? Were there 9? Did they really ride on camels? Or did they ride on donkeys like Jesus? Or did they ride on horses? Or did they just walk? You know, there are lots of unanswered questions that we have. And, you know, then after Jesus is born, there would be this 33-year-long documentary. We would see the first smile, the first giggle, the first steps that he took. We know what happened between the manger in Bethlehem and 12 years down the road when he went to the temple. And we would know the mystery that bothers me and it bothers most folks. What did he do for 18 years? After he left the temple at age 12, until he started preaching, what did he do? You know, we would find out some of these unanswered questions, and then, once he entered his preaching ministry, think about the cameras there on the mount as he preached that famous sermon, heard by the entire world, translated into every imaginable language, and they tried to keep it commercial free as best they could. So you see, according to the world's standards, when Jesus came some 2,000 years ago, it wasn't the right time. The word didn't get out very quickly. And then he probably came in the wrong package. Think about it. Jesus as a baby. God, Almighty God, wrapped up in fragile innocence of infant flesh. Now, in our supersized, supercharged world, we demand something bigger. We want a God with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm like the prophets called for. We want a God that's turbocharged. We want a God that's beefed up. We want a hard-bodied God, a no-nonsense God, a take-charge God, a the force be with you kind of God. That's what the world wanted. But, you know, when God announces his coming, he puts everybody on hold until their expectations are so high. And then he comes in with just an infant. And he makes the world wait 30 years until that child grows up. What do we want? We want something that comes in now and will turn the world upside down now. We don't want to wait for anything. So according to the world's standards, he probably came at the wrong time. And then he came through the wrong people. Stay with me. He was the wrong gift. He came at the wrong time. He came in the wrong package. But he came through the wrong people. Joseph was a nobody. Now we know, the Bible's told us, we're aware, he was a far distant relative of King David. But so was Mary. And probably, if you trace it, so were half of the Jewish people in Israel. But Mary and Joseph were everyday folks. Remember from last Sunday's message? Who should Jesus have been born to? Elizabeth and Zechariah, because they were the uppity-ups. They were the priestly group. They were the higher end. Joseph and Mary, they were the have-nots. You know, shouldn't the Son of God, our Savior, have come from a more established, well-thought of, and well-known family than from just a dinky carpenter from Nazareth? Think of all the families that Jesus could have been born into today that would have prepared him in the very best schools, that would have prepared him in the best synagogues possible. Mary and Joseph were nobody. But that